Welcome to this 2022 special presentation for Black History Month. We have the privilege today to have two wonderful Loudoun County, Virginia residents. The first is a 97-year-old young Sarah Ann Brooks, born in 1924, and her younger sister, Rosetta Bush, a longtime Loudoun County resident who's 92, born in 1929. We are going to take this opportunity to introduce these Loudoun County residents and get some understanding from their perspective of things that have happened to them over their lifetime for Black history from the past all the way up into the present. Let me tell you about these ladies. They were born in Loudoun County, but in Sarah's case, she moved away for decades to live in Washington, D.C. and the state of Maryland. But she's recently returned in her retirement to live here in Loudoun County. So now we also have Rosetta Bush, and we're in her home today, which she's lived in over 60 years after her husband, William Bush, actually built this property. I am Rosetta's daughter, and I'm the aunt of Sarah. Sarah's niece, excuse me. So we're going to have an opportunity to just have a tag team where we're going to ask questions of these ladies and get their perspective. As I've told them, there's no wrong answers. It's just us learning from them. The first question, without further ado, is going to be about presidents. They have lived a long life, and there have been many presidents that have come and gone, and we wanted to get their perspective on some insights they may have on presidents. So Sarah, since you are the actual youngest, most wise in the room, we wanted to start off with you and ask you, are there any presidents that come to mind that have had an impact on your life?
President Roosevelt.
Okay, how so?
And Kennedy, and Nixon. They opened up jobs for the government, for all the people that go into the government. I was in food service for 28 years, and after he opened up the opportunity for to go into the government, so I got a job in the government.
So are you saying that under President Nixon that Black Americans weren't having jobs in the federal government, and something in legislation he did allowed you to work? And you worked in food service for how long?
28 years.
28 years. So you retired from the federal government. Okay.
This was the district government.
Oh, the district government. And then...
I wasn't old enough to retire then.
Oh, okay. So did you work anywhere else?
I went to NIH and worked, I worked at 2 years at Capitol Hill.
Okay.
And then I went to, after I had put in an application for government prison office, and it come through. So I went there and took the stress test, and I got that job, and I think it was 85.
Okay.
So I went there for the test, and then they had to call me back they forgot to give me this test, stress test. So I had to go back and take that for they would hire me. But I went down 85, so I stayed there until 106.
Okay. So
32 years.
32 years.
The government, NIH, and I don't know where Capitol Hill give me much. I don't know.
But you were able to get that job because of legislation for President Nixon. That's very interesting. Very interesting.
And I worked in it. On the line serving coffee. Then at lunchtime, I cut pies and cakes. I mean, in the morning. And then after, I had to go to the executive dining room and wait on the executive people for lunch. Oh. And when I went there, I stayed there till NIH called me, and then I went up to NIH, and this guy that was EEO, Mr. Jackson, told me he was leaving, and I told him I was leaving, going too. So I asked him about getting into the prison office. So he told me to bring me my application, and I would verify so that he would look at it.
Wonderful.
And I had that carried upstairs to him. And then he filled it out, and I had to wait 1 year. And after 1 year, I got into the government office.
Well, that's wonderful news. So were there any other presidents that you said, Roosevelt, you said Kennedy, and you said Nixon, any other presidents?
Well, can't remember them all.
That's okay. You don't have to remember all. I can let your sister tell me some of her thoughts regarding.
She know more about it. Some of them, I left here.
Okay.
Got a job in the district.
Okay.
And then I babysit until I got into the food service.
Okay. So talking about presidents, Rosetta, what would you think are some of the presidents that have impacted your life as a black woman?
As a black person in the beginning, I think we were really proud when we, like I say, when we had President Roosevelt. And so he was opened up a lot of things for as far as health-wise, because he was a paraplegic himself, I think. And then he made it so that people that was paraplegic or had any kind of disability or anything, you could work. Because those disability people, they wouldn't get hired, wouldn't hire nobody like that. You would have to go to a special place to work. But so far, and after he came there as a president in a wheelchair, so he's the top office, you know. Well, why can't the other people get in the office and work with a wheelchair? Then they have this Disability Act, that thing, so that the disability people could work in the government. Then they made ramps and things for the wheelchair go up and down. At first, they didn't have it, because they had the elevator. But then when they got ready to go in the building, they had to go in the building, they had to have a ramp to go in. So this is how come they had to put ramps for most of the buildings so that the people with disabilities could go to work.
Right, and that was a big gap between Roosevelt's time and the American Disabilities Act that happened several decades later. So Roosevelt for you both, that was a big impact because of the support of helping people with disabilities. Any other presidents to come to mind?
Yeah, and of course I like Eisenhower. I remember when he came in, because he was an army person. He came in, and then I don't remember anything he did right now, but then I went down. I like Barack Obama. When he came in, he did the Health Act thing.
The Affordable Care Act?
Affordable Care Act. So everybody could have insurance. And many people didn't have insurance and was afraid to go to the doctor and were dying. They had no insurance. And they wouldn't take you, look at you if you didn't have insurance. So that's why he had this Affordable Care Act. And they tried to cut it down. They tried to cut parts of it out. But I think it's still in effect. And people can still get health service.
Before we leave presidents, I have to ask a question. You brought up President John F. Kennedy. When President Kennedy was assassinated because of his support for civil rights, and how did that affect you all in your life?
It was awful.
It was terrible. There's nothing you can do, but it's just pray.
And
you never know what he was going to do.
He was assassinated just for unselfish reasons, because he was helping the blacks and not only blacks, all the people of color, and all the blacks. So it's just all the people that needed help, and so he didn't see no color as far as that concerned. He give you a job, you go to a job.
And he paid for it with his life. Now, Sarah, you had said that initially you had started with food service and serving. Back in that time and all through your lives, Black Americans had different jobs and different salaries. Can you see the difference of how it changed from whatever jobs you had to start with?
Yeah.
And then how it changed to opportunities you may have had in the future, and even opportunities we may have today as the younger generation. Can you share any insight on that, Mom? You want to start?
Okay, when I first went to work, they were making $1 a day, and I was helping in homes, in private home and family. $1 a day, not $1 out, $1 a day. And I was just as proud if I could get work and get a dollar, and then it went from there to when they raised the wages, we got $1.50. And then they went to I can't remember all the years that they did. They had a $5. The lowest they could go, but they couldn't get anything in lower than $5. Right? Then they got up to $8.50. But they had to work from 5 to 8.50, and she let me took them so long to get 8.50.
So the minimum wage you're talking about?
Yeah, minimum
right?
wage, and then they finally went to $10. And but you know, it didn't go right behind each other. They had to wait in between for years for it to get there. And it was just so hard. Because I got my first full-time job, I got $50 a week, and I was working at a restaurant, a simple restaurant, and it was a fast food like type of restaurant. But this man, he just had gotten out of service himself. He opened this fast food fish restaurant, shrimp boat, and I worked there for about a year and a half. And while I was there, I had an application in for another job, and it was at a bank. And they called me, so I had to tell the people at the shrimp boat that I had to leave there and leave and go. I'm getting another place, another job. And I went to Dominion Bank. It was Dominion Bank at that time, and applied for. They wanted keep count operators. It was keep points. I said, I don't know. They said they trained me. So I went down and found out it was for working in the proof department, proving this is how I didn't know anything about how the money went to your money goes to the bank. The money go into the bank in a bundle. Then the teller puts it in another bundle, and then has to go to the proof department to get approved. So when it came to us in the proof department, we had to go through each thing, each bundle, and put that in the...
So you had a job, they had on-the-job training that you were afforded the opportunity. So how is someone that's making, before I talk to Sarah, how is someone that's making $1 a day able to support a family when you have children and have to take care of household on $1 a day, which is not much for the week? How did you make things stretch?
You work 5 days.
You work 5 days
a week,
right.
You know, and then you get $1. But that one, but now went to the bank was late.
Oh, I know, but I'm saying in general, you started from a minimum wage of only $1 and then got to a $5 and $8. But how does someone who, that's not a lot of money to live on, we know for today that would be kind of impossible, but how do you actually learn to live on $1 a day with a 5-day a week? So that's $5 a week, pretty much, right?
One thing about the thing, you could get a loaf of bread for about 8 cents. All times of it. And then, you know, it wasn't the food and the clothing they wasn't as high. And it's all, you know, within the reason that you could buy something or you put it, you call it a layaway section. If you want something, if you're working, you can put something away and you buy it. But many times we order from a catalog. They would have a nice little dress or suit. It's $9.95, $10.95. That's what girls have. One old catalog. We had Sisma book, and we had number one. But the clothes wasn't that high, so you could buy something with that. Okay. And you could account with them. They would send it to you, then you pay them. You said, if you didn't send it money when you got it, you had they would put you on a kind of thing that
layaway payment plan.
Layaway payment plan. Okay. Yeah. And then that way you could pay on your layaway payment or whatever, or you had a payment plan. You get what you want, then you pay so much a month on it.
So Sarah, you left Loudoun County and you went to bigger fish and bigger locations. So how was it for your job opportunities and money? That's probably one of the reasons you left, right?
Well, when I left Virginia, I went to D.C. and I stayed with my sister, and then she helped me to get a job. I was a babysitter, and I worked there for a while. Then I got a job in the food service. Yeah. And I worked there for, when I come out of food service, and Nixon, it was $1.98 an hour. That's all. That's all we were getting.
Not that much.
That's the truth. You had to work on, that's what we had to get.
So a lot of the things that I probably an understanding is that the reason why we probably have the minimum wage laws is because there wasn't a living wage that you all really were having at $1.98 until they moved it up to $5, and then it's increased over time. Now, ladies, in the news of late, for the last few years, we have been seeing a lot more discussion about racism. And for your generation of people who have lived through the 20s, 30s, 40s, 60s, and now we're in 2022, when it comes to what some may not understand as racism, can you give us some perspective of what exactly you've encountered in your life and what you're seeing maybe being repeated again in some respect of people not liking people because of the color of their skin?
First, I would say, I can recall it when I was going to school. Now, we were going to school, okay. I went to a one-room schoolhouse here, and it was in our church, because they didn't have schools for Negroes at that time. Any school building, so we used the church building. The church right now, First Baptist Church in Watson. And we went to school there. And, but when we got out, I went to 8th grade. When we got ready to go to high school, you had to go to Leesburg, because there wasn't a high school here closely. But we needed someplace to go. We needed a bus or something to go to get there. We went to the school board. So there wasn't enough people out here to send a bus out. Well, if we wanted to get to Leesburg, we didn't have to meet the bus at Gilbert's Corner, or Gilbert's Corner was out there on Route 50, going west. And how would a child living here on Watson Road get to Gilbert's Corner unless you walk? And the bus had to come on certain time, he had to get there and pick it up. Mom said, no, kids not going to go out there like that, walking like that, in that traffic like that. And it wasn't as much traffic as it is now, but how would you like to walk from Watson Road? There wasn't no name on it then. It was just called 860.
Well, 860 and then 281.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And then walk up to Gilbert's Corner.
Mm-hmm.
Or walk down 50 up to Gilbert's Corner to catch a bus to go to school. At what time you would have to get up and get there? So we had to get, Mom said, no, we're not going to start it. So they didn't do that.
So let me understand something. When I asked you about racism, so you're saying the first understanding that you saw blatant is that the treatment of how the black children and education and busing, and the fact that because the black children were at a different location than the white children, they were being asked to walk and not be in safe environments to get to even an opportunity to go to school. And then they were in churches because they couldn't go to the white schools in Leesburg, Virginia. Right. Is that what you're saying? Right.
In the beginning, and then when 1955, 56 came along, when they had broke that the barrier for the school system, where you didn't have to go to Leesburg, you went to the closest school that was. And I remember you were small, and the first school you went to was Aldi.
I was in the 60s, so my brother Aaron would have been alive.
Yeah, he went to Aldi also. He went there first, and by the time he could leave Aldi to go to the high school or whatever, then you were going in. So that was.
So did you have a situation where your children were at one time segregated, and then they went to a desegregated school? Is that what you're sharing too?
Yeah, okay. But then too, we had asked for a bus to come out, but it was a bus coming out here picking up the white children, but we weren't allowed to ride on it. That was coming right here to the store, pick up the children on the road, white kids. Right past us, we couldn't get on the bus. So that was the position they had. We had to go either, like I said, to Gilbert's Corner or somewhere to meet somebody, because meet the bus coming out from Middleburg, they'll stop there and pick you up and take you.
So some of the laws that came out earlier about Brown versus the Board of Education, separate but equal, you weren't really getting equal treatment because the white children may have gotten separate.
And that bus was riding on that. We paying taxes. Yeah. That bus was riding out here picking up their children. And we had to walk, and we had to go, or else didn't go at all. Right. So
Sarah, in addition to the education and busing, the differences between races with education and busing and school systems, what did you see as some of the racisms back in the day versus what you may be seeing now?
Yeah, well, I mean, just about the same. You couldn't ride the bus. If you could go to D.C., you had to walk out to Mount Zion, get the bus, and you had to sit in the back. And then when you when I come out of school, they didn't have any buses for us to go to high school, so I left. Went to D.C. Got me a job. Forget it.
What's interesting is that I was born in the 60s, but I remember being in middle school and getting on a bus, and I was in the front of the bus. But a little white girl came on, and they asked me to move. And another little black boy said, she's not moving. Why should she move? But it's interesting to know that there was still this concept or residual thought that you need to be in the back of the bus. You don't have the privilege to be in the front of the bus. And this was in the 70s. So that still may see.
Yeah.
So you said the word Negro. I've noticed that over the decades, the names of black people have changed, and you were at one time colored people. My birth certificate says I'm colored. And then Negro, colored, Black American, African American, and sometimes you would call out of your name and you call it NIGG. You know, that was a racial slur. And so what have you seen as far as name calling from what you had back then versus what you have that you're starting to see kind of being revived as some of that ugliness and discussion?
But now, if you call someone, you know, if in their name, there's, I think there's a law. I don't know if it's a law or not, but you will get reprimanded for it. I know, but especially if you're in a public place. But if you you know, walking on the road or anything like that, you don't know who this might ride past you and do something, but we don't know that. But if you were in a public place and they try to ignore you, then you can always report that. Because you're supposed to be treated, if you want to go in the library, you go in there and it's like everybody else, and get your books and read and what you want to read and stay in there and read it. But in the beginning, you know, we had to go in there and get our books and take them out. We wouldn't let you sit down in there. So that was another thing. And but like with the school, it was terrible because we didn't have no way to get to school, and we had no school close enough that we could even walk to high school or whatever. So until I think in the early, my brother and sister went in. Brother and Bernice went to the first time we had the bus. They rode the bus. I think it was 88 or 89, something like that.
88 or 89.
88 or
what
89
year?
Of 1988 or 1989.
That would be.
1988.
You mean ride a bus to
Ride
work?
a bus to school.
Well, they wouldn't have been in school in 1989. Do you have the right year?
I don't know. But
Yeah, you probably got your years off. I'll let you think that through. What I find interesting too, you're talking about education and sometimes words. So what about violence? Did you all have to be afraid as far as violence when it came to your color?
No, we wasn't afraid. It's just that we mind our own business. They mind theirs. So we didn't have no problem with that.
So there were no relatives or people you'd heard of that had been lynched or people doing anything for...
There were some, but not, you know, we didn't know anyone. There were some, in some of the instances, some of the states that had, you know, people...
We never had it.
We never had it
but
around.
Loudoun County was pretty safe as far as the environment for violence.
People were very nice. The white folks were very nice to my mother, and she went to work for them. And they would come and pick her up and take her, and she would come and do house cleaning for them and cook for them. But they were very nice people.
So when you heard about violence in other states, for example, when civil rights started happening in the 60s and you heard about Dr. King, it wasn't really in Loudoun County, but you did hear about it. Right. So what was your reaction when you started to hear more about civil rights and people doing activism or doing things, marches and sit-ins and those kind of things? What were you all thinking when you started hearing those activities?
We wanted to go, but my mom said no, we were too young to go out to go by ourselves. And she would not let us go out. So
she was afraid for your safety?
I think she was, because we were only one there, and she didn't want to have to send us out. Let us go out. We were 17, 18 years old and go be marching and things like that. It's not that we wanted to do, but she wouldn't let us go.
So when you say she wouldn't let you go, you had 15 brothers and sisters. One of your
But they all wasn't home at
right.
that time.
So
That's the way it working.
So you didn't hear of any of your brothers and sisters
No,
participating?
No, they all had good,
Because my
got
brother,
jobs.
most of my brothers worked for people that they lived in.
And they treated them very nice.
Right. So as you hear things that are happening on the news now, when they have slogans or marches for Black Lives Matters or different violence against young people or whoever that may be of color, do you think that's a result of something that was in the past that is kind of bubbling up again?
It is.
And what were your thoughts when you see that on the news?
I see that, but right now you're not able to help do anything because of we're older. But yeah, we see it, and we know we have to do the same thing. But it's so much more, ways that, and you don't know what children got. You don't know what to say to them at the time because too many guns in the places, and there's so much violence. But then we have to be careful with that. And we see it, but we can't the only thing we do now is read about it because we keep in the way. I'm not able to go out now and
They didn't have all the people had guns, but they didn't do like they wasn't using them like the kids and things are doing now.
when
You
not
never heard
so-
tell nobody shooting nobody. Unless it's somebody like the shepherds.
So without,
they had a gun,
without having too many names, because we don't want to do anything to say anything out of people's names, but in the case of the children weren't doing that or the adults weren't doing that, do you think it has to do with the way that you all may have been raised in your households and what you had instilled in you back then versus what's happening now? What's the difference that you see of how family structures or how people live now with kids and bringing them up? Do you see a big difference now?
Yeah, it's a difference.
Can you share what are the differences you're seeing?
The kids, I guess they don't mind their parents, and they just do what they want to do. And they can get guns and things, but we didn't have to do that. We never had no guns or nothing, no violence or nothing, fighting nobody.
Well, how did you handle when you had a disagreement? You didn't agree with somebody in your family or other people out in the world. Were you told to do something different than use a gun? I mean, how did you all handle when you had a conflict?
Just didn't say anything. But we didn't have to with the contracts with them at that time, like they do now. It's altogether different. When we came up and when with the period the kids are coming up now.
How so?
They don't want to mind their parents, and they don't do what the parents tell them to do. And it's, when they get 12, 13 years old, they just think they're grown. Mom and dad don't know nothing.
Yeah, that's true too, because sometimes it's one family, one parent family. Maybe the mother has the children or the father has the children, one or the other. But most of the time the mother is left with the kid, and no man in the house at all. The children just get to a certain age, they start talking back, and the mother she try to catch them, and you can't do that to me. I'll go and call the police. One little boy went and called the police because the mama says he's going to beat him. If they say you beat me, he says you beat me, I'm going to call the police.
So I heard you say that two-parent households may have been more prevalent back in your generation versus what we have now, and that there's a level of respect that children didn't talk back or act out because they had respect, or was there fear? Because back in your generations, there was more what they would call corporal punishment, or you got a what for if you were to act out. Your parents wouldn't tolerate a lot of that disobedience that they do now.
Yeah. Well, they beat us too, but I mean, it wasn't. It was a love beat. It wasn't like that. They would throw you out.
You have a lot of love beats, huh?
Beat you and throw you outside. And then they beat the kids, and kids go out and throw them outside, and they come back and bring the gun back. And the parents, but we had a beating. I had many beatings, but it's for my correction. Something I did that I shouldn't have done, but I didn't do it again. Mm-hmm. That was one of the things. That's what the beatings are for. If you have a child that's don't want to mind, mm-hmm. And but now you can't even beat your child. and the guys don't know, you can't beat them. So you have to know how to correct.
Well,
them.
there's a way to discipline that you have to do within the law and not be abusive. So
they have the law on the book because people are going, you beat them sometimes. They got some beating like we got. I think my mom would probably been in jail a lot of times. But you know, this one of those things.
She didn't
do it to kill us.
She wasn't that rude.
Right.
She did it for correction.
Right.
And it was, if you didn't listen, then you have that's what you would get. And next time she didn't have to do that but once or twice.
Right. You got the message. You understood.
Get the message, right? Get over. But then too, I can say now with mine, and when they come up, I can sit down and talk to mine because I say I ain't gonna beat y'all like I got to beat. But you got a whipping, but you didn't get one for, you know, just every time you turn around you got a whipping. You didn't.
Yeah, you got one that you remembered and you try not to do it again.
Right. And you didn't do that again. You didn't do that again. If you got a whipping for something, you didn't do it again. And if they tell you you couldn't go nowhere. We couldn't go, but we went up at our house. We couldn't go no further than our uncle's house, and up at the end of the had a little bush back called sugar pin, what do you call it? Sugar pin. I think it was sugar pin bush tree. We couldn't go no further than that. That was the end of his yard. The field we used to play ball in, and we couldn't go no further than that. We couldn't go down. Then when we got maybe working after we working and living in, we got to go to the top of the big hill. But that was our limit. We had to go that far and come back.
So you got a lot of family around?
Yeah,
is that
family
something
all
too?
around. They saw you going somewhere in the wrong direction, or getting in the car with somebody they didn't know. I don't know, boy, mama knew that before you got home.
So as Black Americans back then, do you think having that family structure
It was better.
around and people looking out for one another, children, whether they were yours or neighbors, everyone was looking out to work together to protect the community?
It was good.
Well, I don't think any of them did anything too much wrong. The parents didn't correct them. But it was just that they tried to bring them up in the right way.
You didn't have to go to jail to get none of us. She raised 12 of her own and 2 of her grandchildren, and made 14 children right there together. So, you know, she raised those, and as if it were her, you know, and she never had to go to jail. We ain't never been to jail. Ain't never been nothing like that.
Now, how would you say that your church, you mentioned First Baptist Church Watson, one of the historical churches in Loudoun County. How would you say that the influence of the church had on your family and the Black community?
Well, the preachers that we had were company. We had one preacher there. He was there for 39, 40 years. But he was, they would come from D.C. And sometimes we had one preacher would come up here and Mount Zion on the bus and walk in here to the church and walk back. Or somebody would, he didn't have a car. And then nobody bring him up to me and bring me in. So he'd walk in, have church, and go back, walk back out to Mount Zion, get back on the bus. Bus coming on a certain time. And go back. But we had the church, and then the same thing with the church. The church was disciplined. The people and the ministers, the people at the church knew your family, knew you. And if you went there for Sunday school or whatever, that's what you went for. And when you got through service, then you go back home. But you didn't stop by my house and say, I come home when I get ready. No, you go home and then you want to go back and play or whatever. You would ask and your mother would let you go back. But most of the time when you got out of church, you went home.
So, Sarah, when you went to D.C., you left a small country environment of the church here at Watson. Did you find that the community of the neighborhood and the churches were similar in Washington, or was it a whole different situation?
I think it was wholly different. It was different from what we had here in Washington.
How so?
There were more people, and you could join whatever you wanted at the church. You know, I went to 10th Street, and I joined the nurses unit. And I was thinking about it all day, and after I got the nurse and the piano player, she got happy. She didn't want me to touch her. Oh, boy, she said, you heard about the kid now. You just fall out on the floor, whatever. If somebody else gonna get you, I won't. But they, I mean, honey, there's some rough people. There's some rough people down there. Don't you think they ain't very, very bad?
So where you said that Loudoun County was a little easier and safer when you went to the different environment of the District of Columbia, that was a whole different environment.
Yes.
Were you ready for that environment? I knew your sister was down there, but were you ready to go into such a fast-paced environment of D.C., especially as a new black woman that's so young?
Well, I mind my own business and went to work and went to church and come on back home.
I'm segueing into a different subject. We're talking a lot in the news and about voting rights. Now, you all lived in a time where black Americans were not allowed to vote, and then you saw things change with the law that they put it on the books that you could vote, but then there were obstacles. You know, there was Jim Crow laws, there was poll taxes, it's guessing marbles in a jar. Can you share how that was in your experience, and then tell us what you think about modern day, what we're seeing, them going backwards, trying to make it harder for people of color to vote?
I can't remember that.
I remember.
I remember it, but
you don't remember not being able to vote, or what don't you remember?
I didn't. I don't think I remember that. I don't remember voting.
You don't remember ever voting, or
In Virginia, until I got to the D.C.
So you voted in D.C. What year, what time frame would you think you started voting?
I don't know. I can't remember then.
Being too young. One of those young moments, I bet. But do you remember anything about voting, your first time? Or
Yeah, no, I remember home with my mom, and my husband was in Surrey. Excuse me. And excuse me. I would take. I wasn't old enough to go to vote, but I would take her, go with her to work, and then she would, if she wanted to go to vote. But I remember we went over and a lady carried us to Leesburg. One of my work ladies carried us to Leesburg to vote. I mean, you have to get registered up because there was a poll tax. If you wanted to vote, you couldn't vote if you hadn't paid your poll tax. And they would have that book there. If you went in that voting thing to look and your name wasn't on that book, you wasn't going to vote.
How much did a poll tax cost?
Poll tax was $1.50. And if you hadn't paid that in the time to go to vote, you ain't gonna vote. They won't let you vote.
And giving us some perspective, you said that you were making $1 a day or $5 a week at the earlier time, and it got to be higher, $5 for minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
So $1.50 for every person that was old enough to vote. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, that was. But you had to be 18, I think, or 21. I can't remember which one it was where you could vote. I think it was 21, because before you could vote. Because I remember I said, I can't wait to get 21 so I can vote. Or maybe then they lowered it back to 18. But that was way on up the years. Way on up in the later years. But it was 8. One time, the first beginning was 21. And I said, I can't wait to get 21 or 18, whatever it was the first time when I met her. I used to carry Mama over. But like I said, I was saying that later carried her over to vote, and she had not paid her poll tax. So they wouldn't let her vote. And I said, oh my God. And that was, and wasn't anybody that I can remember that was famous or did anything, or going to do anything for us, but I couldn't remember all that politics about it. But I remember they wouldn't let her vote because she hadn't paid her poll tax. So the next year we went up, we got the poll tax paid. And then when she went to vote, she could vote. Because she couldn't read or write, and we had to take her over to do that.
Right. So in your years, you've been a volunteer for decades, and one of the things I remember that you have volunteered for is you were an election worker. You and your, was it your sister Viola or just you? Did you all help with the actual elections in Loudoun County?
No, we have to carry people. We could carry somebody to the vote,
Okay.
but we never did any, going out to poll, working the polls or anything. I did sign up one time, but I didn't get called.
Oh, okay. I thought you had said you were interested in doing
But
that.
I did, and but then they never did get called. I never did get called. But anyway, they were times I can remember that, and then I got my mom to vote. And I said, when I get older, I'm going to vote. Now, I vote. I was happy to do that. Because I remember saying to myself, I can't wait till I get old enough to vote. And then we had the teachers that would come up and talk to us and tell us, if you don't vote, you can't get this. We got to get one thing for the school down here. If we don't vote, we can't get it. If your name is not on the poll to vote, they wouldn't give you anything. That's for the school with anything else.
So how does it feel to hear that possibly there are things that are underway to keep you from voting now?
It's a disgrace. Because every citizen in the United States, every chick or child, regardless of what you are, you're a person. You are a citizen, and you should be allowed. That's one of your rightful things you should do when you're allowed to. When you're old enough to vote, and you're old enough to come of age to vote, go and vote. Because many children don't know why it's so important for them to vote, register to vote. So you have to sit down. That's what I'm saying. We're getting ready to say the teachers would help us, and how I got explanation of why it's so important to vote. Because if you don't vote, you're burdening nothing in the county or anything. If you don't vote for somebody, if they're not doing what you want to do, you can vote them out. But you got to know what that person stands for. And if you don't know that, somebody had to explain to you what it's for. Because I remember the teacher would, take us to the side, and because we was in black school anyway, and tell us, if you don't vote, you can't get this for the school. We'll never get out of the school if we don't vote.
Now, when you said black school, what does that mean? You all had you were in the segregated school. This was at the Watson Church or different
right,
a school?
Church, Watson Church down here.
So Watson Church. Were
You
you at the church too, getting school? Mm-hmm. What grade did you all complete under that school system in a church?
I went to 7th grade.
So you finished at 7th grade and you finished at 8th grade.
In 8th grade, I went to Terrell Junior High School in Washington.
Okay.
With my sister, I was down there.
And you had to wait 8 years up here before you go to high school. I said, oh no,
Is that because you were black? You couldn't go immediately?
We didn't have no buses.
Yeah.
Because that's full circle. Because you didn't have the transportation because you were black, you couldn't further your education,
Right.
which would impact what livelihood you would have and what ability you would have to support your family.
I was determined I was going to I was going to get to school, get my education, get my high school diploma. And went over there and I went to D.C. and lived with my sister, and I got the 8th grade and 9th grade, graduated from that, and of junior high school. And then when I finished that, I was going to go to high school, but some things at home was getting bad, and I had to come back up and help mom with the children was leaving, and nobody there stayed with her, and Helm, I think, was small at home too. And it had some small children there. We had to help out with some things like that.
So you're saying the importance of education, you've said that a couple of times, to the people that are the generation now, especially of black Americans and people of color. Do you still see that there's a great value in them having education now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, everybody should be educated. It should be, you should not have to pay to go all the way up to the first or second year in college. They should be like a high school. They're talking about now trying to make the first and second year of college being the same as the high school.
So that they can have a fair opportunity.
Or 4 years high school.
Right.
4 years and finish the high school and go on 4 years of other education after you pass 9th, 10th grade. Go on up if you want to go on to college.
Right.
And because it's supposed to be a rich country. I mean, one of the richest countries in the world. Why can't you educate your people to go on and do something? It'd be nice to have college. You have children who have to go away from home and stay.
Mm-hmm. You said something that made me think of black and wealth. Now in 2022, there are more wealthy people. Mm-hmm. When you were coming up, you didn't have an Oprah Winfrey or people who were wealthy in entertainment or sports or things. How has that made you proud as black Americans to see that you have groups of people that are starting to advance and be elevated to president or owners of businesses and that kind of thing? How do you feel about that?
I feel great. And
It's
a hard road. I bet they had a hard road to travel. It didn't come by that easy. those that did have it, unless something, family, somebody died and left you something, you know, whatever. Then you work hard and just like you say, and save your money and not save your money, but work for a better education. Keep on trying. You want to finish college, you want to go to college, go on to college. Sometimes you work with people and they send you to college. That has been somewhat, but it's just one of those things you have to have a mind to want to do. I was determined I was going to get my diploma.
So as we come to a close, what would you say? You're two Black American women coming from a small county of Loudoun that has changed. Loudoun County itself has changed dramatically. I know you've been away for several years, but the Loudoun County of the 1920s is significantly different and diversified in 2022. What would you all say as things that you want to give as advice to the Black American children that will come long behind you and see this videos years from now? What advice would you give to them? I've heard you say anything.
I would say study and work hard, get your education, and go as far as you can go with your education. The more education you have, the better job you get. And if you have a mind that you want to finish college and do something great, you can do that. You want to be a technician or you want to be a TV person, you can work hard, you can do that. And you know, anybody that can do it, not only children that are around here or lower, don't have the money. Sometimes people don't have the money put aside for people that can't afford to send their children to college or even to school. So it's one of those things. But you work hard. I said any child will work hard. And I mean work hard in your school, and I don't mean you just working years. I mean you work hard, study, have a mind to study. Go as far as you want to go. Don't ever stop. Don't ever stop learning.
Sarah?
What was the question?
What advice would you give to young people that you've lived these 97 years? What advice would you give to them as young Black Americans or people of color?
Well, I looked at them on TV. A lot of them is doing very good. I like where they get the young girls and get up and speak for themselves and you know, say a lot of things that is really right for the kids that are coming up behind them. But I don't know. I don't want them to come up like I come up. Go to school and get an education and get a job and work.
Work hard. Do what you want. Do what you want with anything. If you want to be anything, you can work hard towards it.
Thank you, Chris. I'd like to thank Sarah and Rosetta today for the wonderful opportunity to learn from your life experience. I'd like to thank HKL for You Productions for helping with this 2022 Black History event of history, past and present. Please join us for our next educational venture where we'll talk to young adults and get their perspective about past and present. Thank you.